Hi, this is another Ask Augustin, and today I'm going to just answer questions that I got on Facebook and Instagram from all of you. Mostly about things maybe that I can answer pretty quickly. Some questions require really long answers and might need their own videos, I think. So I got an interesting question. When you play, do you look at your fingers, close your eyes, or both? I think that it's important not to be like distracted by what your fingers are doing. So if you feel that way, then it might be better to close your eyes. I find that looking at what I'm doing is mostly useful in terms of the bow, because it allows me to like check whether my bow is straight and where exactly I am, and sometimes that can be helpful. And maybe on a subconscious level, sometimes looking at your hands can help. But overall, no, I try to be able to play without looking at it, because for the left hand it's not really useful. It's not like you can actually see where you need to place the fingers, because it's such a weird angle that we look at. Yeah, somebody asked about the piece of cloth that I have here on the violin. Yeah, it's a funny reason why I have it. It's because actually the bottom of the chin rest kept making a hole into my concert suits, and eventually one day I realized all my suits have like damaged fabric there, and so I started using this little cloth which just stops the metal from basically cutting into my concert suit. This is something that would only happen to somebody who doesn't use a shoulder rest, so where it touches directly on the fabric. So how much should you practice? It's a good question. I think it's important to get, if you want to make a lot of improvement, then really focusing and practicing a lot and putting in a lot of time can help you achieve a breakthrough. And there were a couple of moments in my life. One was very early on, when I was about 8 or 9 years old, when I was playing a lot, sometimes 7-8 hours a day. And the other moment was when I was around 20 years old, when I also played about that much. And I feel like both times I really had major breakthroughs that I got a lot better because I was basically thinking about violin all day long. But it's not necessary and also not healthy to like live like that your whole life. So nowadays I might practice a couple hours a day, maybe 1 or 2. If I have a concert coming up and I really need to work, it could be more. It depends a little bit on what's needed. One thing that I think is important is, and very important, is to play every day, even if it's not that much, because it keeps your fingers going, and it's somehow, you have a level of comfort that you just can't have if you take longer breaks between practice. Performing contemporary music. Well, this is very important to me. I think that it's an important role of every musician to find contemporary music that speaks to us and champion it and play it and program it. Sometimes I think that there's almost too much attention on premieres, on brand new music that's written for you. That's exciting too, but then sometimes what happens is that something gets performed for the first time and then doesn't actually get played again. So I think it's also important to look for things that already exist that need to be played by even more people. And so I've been doing a bit of both. A couple of composers have written works for me. David Lang wrote a solo violin piece for me, and now Donnacha Dennehy, an Irish composer who lives in America, is going to write a violin concerto for me later this year. But I've also spent a lot of time looking for contemporary music that already exists, that I feel like should be programmed more. It was actually Schumann who said that all performers should promote good music of their time and fight bad music of their time. That performers should be like really engaged in this kind of process, and there should actually be a lively debate about what the best music written right now is, because this is how eventually I think the great composers emerge. There was this great number of composers who are all talented and interesting, and eventually some of them, their music really endured, and people, more and more people felt this is music that is really worth hearing again and again and again. How did I manage my practice when I had a teacher? And did they solve my problems for me in the lesson? Or did I have to do it myself? So I think that anything you want to improve, you ultimately actually have to do it yourself. Even if your teacher gives you great advice, it's always up to you to actually make that change. You kind of have to find within yourself the energy, the urge to work at something until it's better. So sometimes what I've heard from a lot of people is when they finish school and suddenly they don't see a teacher every week, that it can be hard to kind of motivate yourself. Suddenly you have to be your own teacher. You yourself have to make yourself do this. But ultimately I found everything that I have improved about my playing. I did have to figure it out myself, but luckily, I had a lot of help from good teachers who would give me advice, pointers, and sometimes explain things that I wasn't understanding. My own upbringing was kind of unusual because I actually didn't see a teacher every week. I would sometimes get a bunch of lessons with somebody, with a famous teacher, wonderful people, but then had to work by myself, sometimes for several months. And so this process of this battle with myself, I kind of already was doing at a pretty early age. But it can be really, really satisfying. It's hard to find that discipline within yourself to keep working and at something, but it can be so satisfying when you achieve a breakthrough and you figure out how something works, and something that was impossible for you becomes possible, becomes eventually easy. It's a really satisfying feeling, and when the more you feel that the more you experience that, the more it makes you want to keep going. Got an interesting question about 3-string chords. So when 3 strings are played at the same time, that sort of thing, how I break them so that all 3 notes sound at the same time. It might almost be worth actually doing a whole video on this once, but the way I think about it is that I actually am starting for a split second with the lower 2. I'm basically doing this, except I'm breaking it very, very fast, and as I'm breaking it, I increase the bow speed. So you end up actually hearing all 3 at the same time, but without a really harsh attack. So it's not, but it's like. It's a little bit harder to do on the upbow, but it's the same idea that I break like this very fast, but as I'm breaking it, I increase the bow speed and pressure a lot. So you can this is something useful to practice, like to play all 3 notes at the same time this way, so that it doesn't sound too choppy. Let's see. Got a question about the Baroque bow, because I was releasing some videos where I was playing Bach on a Baroque bow. I got this Baroque bow last year, and I really love playing Bach on it because it has a kind of lightness and articulation. It's like especially happy and fast movements sound really, really fluffy. It's like really it's really, really satisfying. So I'm enjoying that a lot. There's certain things are harder on it. Definitely, it's the bow is more imbalanced. Like the tip feels weaker than a later bow. But I actually found that it is still possible to make any kind of phrase in any shape you want on that bow. I think you can actually do all the same things on both the modern and the Baroque bow. It's just different things are easier on each one of them. And playing with a Baroque bow for a while, then when I switched back to this one, I usually play on a Simon bow, so that's like 19th century bow. Switching back to this one, then I was looking for that lightness when I was playing Bach, and so I actually found it really helped the way I played it on this one as well. So actually experimenting with that can I don't know, open your mind to trying new things. I also got a bunch of questions about harmonics. One was about shifting up to harmonic. This is pretty fast, I think, to answer. I think the important things, this sort of thing. Basically, you slide up until you hit the note, and that's when you have to lift the finger. You can't go further than it. At the same time, for it to really be brilliant, you need to do something with the bow, which is basically that the moment you arrive at the note and are lifting the finger, you also have to increase the bow speed. So your bow basically does this sort of thing. To let it ring and so it really sparkles. I think always for harmonics and also artificial harmonics, it's not just about doing the right thing with the left hand. It's also how you are playing it with the right hand that can help the harmonic to speak, or can prevent it from speaking. So in double stop harmonics, there are certain ones where it actually helps to play with quite a lot of bow speed, and it gets the harmonic to speak, and there are others where you have to do actually the opposite. You have to be quite careful. So when I'm doing some of them, like this one, I push the violin quite a bit to get it to speak. But I know that anything that includes a third, if I give a lot of impulse, it will not speak. So knowing just how to handle each one can be part of it. In general, if you're playing fourth or fifth harmonics, using a lot of bow speed is usually helpful. I'm actually a big proponent of fifth harmonics, because the standard fingering, this might be a topic for another video, but the usual standard fingering that you see always printed in music is always to play them in fourths, but you can also play them as fifths, the same pitch, and it's a slightly bigger stretch, but they speak much more brilliant. They are a little bit louder and have certain advantages. I might go more into that in another video. I hope that's helpful, and I'll see you next time.